robots took my podcast, man.
A world-famous scientist, greatest living master of the occult, has mysteriously vanished. In his place, a huge and fearsome prehistoric monster suddenly appears. What happened to Dr. Waterman? Only one man, last to see him alive, knows. And now he finds himself in deadly peril. The weird, the unbelievable, the supernatural come alive before your very eyes in Equinox. The invisible barrier between good and evil, between light and the forces of darkness. What is the secret of the 1,000-year-old book? See 4 teenage boys and girls fight a devil cult for their lives, their sanity, their eternal souls in Equinox. In supernatural color. Equinox.
Welcome to our podcast, The Robots Took My Podcast. I am Jordan.
And I am Anthony.
And we're talking about one of Anthony's favorites today, one of sort of my favorites, a movie called, what is it called, Anthony?
It is the 1970 film Equinox, which has an interesting history. It began as a 1967 film.
This movie is probably more famous for the talent behind the scenes on this one.
Well, for those of you that haven't heard of Equinox, and I don't know why at this point you haven't, actually, no, this is a much talked about film, but probably not on a lot of people's radar. It was
free plug. It was on HBO Max.
Yeah, you can find it out there. And normally the version that you see is the 1970 version. The reason we're saying that is because this began as more or less a student film of sorts. We had a bunch of filmmakers, really special effects guys, who were all just friends working together and made this film in 1967 ish. And then it was picked up and actually theatrically released in 1970 by Jack Hill, who
Jack Harris. Jack Harris, right? Jack Hill is Big Birdcage Jack Hill, you're thinking. But Jack Harris, Jack Harris, who later picked up another similar kind of student film situation with Dark Star. Anyway.
Yeah, so it was released in 1970. It was reshot with additional scenes. And what many people point out is the cast ages throughout the film. And sometimes they're wearing wigs even because their hair is different or their hair is longer.
Yes.
So going back.
Boy, is it interesting how 1970 is such a far cry from 1967 as far as years go.
It's different hairstyles. I mean, it's really the difference between the 60s and sort of the early 70s, which is a lot happened between those times culturally.
Mm-hmm.
So
totally.
The folks that were making this movie were Dennis Muren, who I guess he worked on a couple of things after this, I think.
Just some small things, like the original Star Wars trilogy, and was a big guy over at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, which was George Lucas's company, later sold, of course. But big enchilada there, a lot of power there. Dennis Muren, and not only that, worked on all the Raiders, Indiana Jones movies, worked on
E.T.
pretty much every movie. E.T. every movie, and then on up into the computer age with Jurassic Park. The list goes on. Even the Phantom Menace and every one of the prequels, I believe he was behind. I could be off there a little bit, but good God, and we're talking major power. A lot of Oscars here.
Yeah, practical special effects master, and has a shelf full of Oscars. So he's probably one of the bigger names to come off of this. But then
I saw a side note. I saw Ed Begley Jr.'s name as assistant camera.
Oh, really?
On the opening credits, yeah. And I think that was explained in the commentary on the Criterion DVD. That yes, that was the actor Ed Begley Jr.
And also we have David Allen,
whose father was an actor, basically, as well.
Ed Begley Sr. or Ed Begley.
David Allen, big time stop motion animator power.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah, sorry to
Laser Blast. List goes on there. Google him. And then Jim Danforth.
David Allen.
Also
Jim Danforth.
And Jim Danforth also was sort of a protege, I believe, of Harryhausen. Worked with him on some films. Did a lot of stop motion for like When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, just a bunch of other things. So these folks were all interested in basically stop motion.
A lot of special effects power here, and early special effects power behind this movie.
And
Definitely.
they do a lot of fun stuff. This movie looks bigger
True.
than it is. The effects
Very
are
true.
a little jerky, but I mean, the film was made for $6,500. This was like just cobbled together, a couple guys in their mid-20s going to
was
school.
It was originally 16 millimeter, I think, the original version, wasn't it? I think, or am I wrong about that? Or was that just so common back then that I'm just confusing it with something else?
I'm not sure, but it certainly does look like it was a cheap print. And Criterion picked it up and cleaned it up and released two versions. Number one, the original version from 1967, Equinox, A Journey into the Supernatural.
Yes.
We'll talk about some of those differences there, but the main theatrical release was picked up, like we said, by Jack Harris of the Blob fame.
Yes, the Blob as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Dark Star, worked with Carpenter, or helped some filmmakers with their the beginning of their careers. Like
Dark Star was John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, who later basically remade Dark Star as Alien with Ridley Scott. And that kickstarted the whole Alien franchise. Basically, we didn't know it was going to, I'm sure nobody thought it was going to be a franchise back in the day.
And John Landis also was schlock. And then this film, which
John Landis was schlock. John Landis of Coming to America fame and American Werewolf in London fame. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the film premiered theatrically in Dallas, interestingly enough, on May 6, 1970. So they took the original film, reshot some scenes, and probably made a little more sense of it, cut out some of the talky parts. And that's where our story begins. And this film went on to influence, we'll talk a little bit later about some of those films it purportedly influenced. But I mean, just a huge influence just for the grit and gumption that these guys put into it. They handmade this film, and it's a fantastic, interesting, very interesting film that begins, Jordan, with what?
I was going to say the title sequence alone is very Hitchcock, very 1960 Time Machine title sequence. It's almost like a Hitchcock title sequence and the 1960 Time Machine, as if it's meshed into one, with also very Bernard Herrmann sounding music on top of that. Bernard Herrmann, who was the famous composer on a lot of Hitchcock movies and Ray Harryhausen movies as well, like Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts. And that just starting with that. And then
it begins with some clocks.
A bunch of clocks in the title sequence, though. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it begins with the clocks and then an abrupt boom, Equinox. You can tell a later ad maybe. And then, like you said, it begins at the end, as we find out. And then there's this huge explosion. And this guy, one of the characters, Dave, we find out is running. And then we don't know why, there's a huge explosion. He's running, and then he's hit by a driverless car. You can actually see the driver. So
that's right. Shots. The driverless car, almost looks like it's right out of like a bad outtake of Superman, the movie. Lex Luthor's little gadgets, maybe. But no, it's because the supernatural. So supernatural did it. Something's not right. Something sinister is going on. Something's rotten in Denmark, as they say in heaven.
And this is voiceovers, the movie. Everything was done in post. So
luckily, voiceover helps a lot here. And Dave is in a padded room. Yes, am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah. We have a reporter. We cut to a reporter in his car.
Looks like a recording booth, I might add.
Yeah, and
you might re-record a song if you're the lead singer.
Yeah, and so he's in the hospital, and this reporter comes up. It's been a year and a day since this Dr. Waters disappeared, and these kids, we find out his friends later, disappeared. And
some crazy shit, man. Some crazy shit. He looks like he's coming off some bad acid.
He is like he's messed up. He's just catatonic, and he's staring at this cross. He's sitting in this padded room, staring at a cross.
Boy, is he ever obsessing over that cross. Yes.
And the reporter comes to interview him. He's talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, he's completely messed up. We can't get him to do anything. And then so he's like, well, let me go talk to him. Bad idea. So the reporter mentions Dr. Waters, and Dave flips out and just attacks him. Right.
Yes. Which, why'd they let a reporter in here in the first fucking place? Pardon my French, you know.
But yeah, I mean, you have to set up the story. I think that's one of the things they did with the 1970 version. It was like, let's cut out a lot of chit chat. Let's get right to the story, have a lot of exposition, which helps because you jump right into this movie. It's a weird concept. It's a weird movie. We jump right in. And furthermore, we're talking to the doctor. And one thing I love, I don't know, there's a Dr. Harris. They cut to this reel to reel. And then
I wonder if that's a self-reference. Yeah, where they're referencing Jack Harris himself, you know.
Yeah. So they've got this reel-to-reel tape recorder, and they're playing what he basically recounted, what Dave recounted when they first came to the hospital a year ago, right?
Oh, yes.
And that begins our story. So the whole story is told in flashback.
Yes, via reel to reel now. Yes. Partly in Dave's mind and the reel to reel combined, I guess, is giving us the flashback. And we are. Dave is with his friend Jim, who was really Herb from WKRP, and two women who I can't remember their names now. They're like their girlfriends, Vicky. I guess. Susan and Vicky. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I guess they're on a blind picnic date. I don't understand, but I guess they kind of know each other already. I guess that it's a church group. I don't know.
Well, hold on. This is a religious group, but I just did want to say that for no reason that Dr. Harris sounds like, do you remember Davy and Goliath? Like that old stop motion.
Yeah. I think it was on Saturday morning at one point where I lived, you know, somewhere in the South.
And Dr. Harris just sounds like Goliath. He's like, hello, Davy. I mean, he's like, hello, David.
He does.
Tell us about the whatever. The Dr.
A man is here to see you. Yeah. A man is here to see you, Dave.
But yeah, so in the original, there's a lot of Jim and Dave in their apartment. Jim's, of course, his best friend.
Yes.
And Vicky, Jim's girlfriend, is coming over. And she's bringing a friend, not nudge, nudge, wink, wink, for Dave. Yeah.
Which, by the way, anytime they yell out the characters' names in the movie, you can pretty much have a drink and make a drinking game out of it and be drunk by the end of the movie. Because each character says each other's character's name so many times. Anthony, where's Anthony?
I never noticed that, Jordan. Hey, and where's Julian, Jordan, by the way?
I was going to ask you, where's Jim? Where is Jim?
So, yeah, you don't need a super memory. You don't need a super memory to memorize.
And yes, where's Julian? You're wondering if they're going to ask where's Julian in one part of this movie from Less Than Zero. Absolutely, for no reason.
Well, I just want to edit Julian.
Yeah.
And just, do freebasing in the cemetery. Anyway.
So Julian was on the picnic the whole time. He was just off. He was out of frame.
They're going on a picnic, guys. And then Dave is going to go see Dr. Waterman, who's
very
his professor.
Innocent. Yeah. Very
innocent.
So he has not even alcohol in this picnic either. There are a bunch of 18-year-olds. Looks like they're really a bunch of 27-year-olds. Maybe, I don't know.
They're a bunch of squares, Jordan. These are the squares kids, Susan's a good church girl. She wears a cross. That comes into play later. They're drinking stream water. They didn't even bring, soda. So they're just good kids. And that's why, to me,
it's almost like you're right. It's almost like the beginning of like this Christian series called Thief of the Night, which if anybody grew up with religion might be familiar with. But yeah, where it begins with this innocent church group of kids that are all being tested by Christ and the end of the world at the same time.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kirk Cameron didn't attempt a remake of this. But anyway, so they're good kids, and it's like a Scooby-Doo episode without the dog.
But in Kirk Cameron's version, they're going to find the right book, Anthony, the right book. You're going to be carrying the right book by the end of the book. No.
Exactly.
Sorry.
They get the wrong book. But for sure. But yeah, it's like a Scooby-Doo episode. These are good kids. They're like, gee whiz. There's a whole gee whiz quality to this. That is,
pretty much.
It's very
They're
strange.
So innocent, even for that time period, when movies are already kids are already smoking dope in movies at this point. If you look back in history, So yeah, they even by standards of the time period this movie came out in, whether it be 67 or 70, they still are innocent looking. You're right. Anyway,
They look like a couple kids you grabbed from like 1963 and put in a movie or something. They just look like,
yeah, exactly,
good
exactly.
kids, good kids.
Yeah, not a
And
touch of bohemian in them.
nothing like that. And so they go to see Dr. Waterman, and they get to Dr. Waterman's cabin, and it's destroyed. Okay, it's a miniature. It's
Boy,
destroyed.
is it! It's a mess. Destroyed too, man. It looks abandoned, like really abandoned, as if something fell in the top of it or something. And it doesn't even look like a fire hit it. It looks like it was hit by something like a natural disaster, which you don't. But yet, it's in California. So anyway,
Yeah, and so they're really perplexed by this. But I must say that you will get your fill of Jim and Vicky squabbling like an old married couple. That is where a
yes.
lot of the humor in this movie comes from. Is just these really lame little quips between those two. Oh, those two, Jim and Vicky. Oh, you know.
Jim, you're so funny, Jim. Vicky, come over here. Yeah.
It's like, well, if you made the potato salad, then I'll just be eating the chicken. I mean, it's just really lame jokes. But
Boy, yeah, they bring out Colonel Sanders, and he's like, the Colonel, which all and the bucket looks a little empty, I must say, already. Oddly, when they bring out the bucket, it's almost like you wonder if the crew behind the camera already ate half the bucket.
yeah, that's a good point. And by crew, we meant two other people,
5 people,
other than the four people,
three other people. Yeah,
who are on camera right now. So
yeah,
now this is important to bring up. So there are many times in this movie where, Jordan, you know what I say? You should have gone home. The movie wouldn't have happened. And there are about 40 times in this movie. Okay, so you get to the cabin, and the cabin is completely destroyed. Not a little ramshackle, completely destroyed.
It looks like, well, you maybe want to call the police. Something doesn't look right here, kind of destroyed.
Yeah. Dr. Waterman's gone. I don't know. His cabin's destroyed. Maybe we need to tell somebody, gang.
Yeah, but no, they want to Scooby-Doo the shit up and investigate.
Scooby-Doo all the way. And so they meet this ranger named Asmodeus, who's suspicious AF. And he's like, I haven't seen Dr. Waterman. Maybe he's back in town. Maybe you kids just need to have your little picnic and get out of here. He's really super sus, really creepy.
I was confused too. Does Dr. Waterman live in a national park? Does he still have a house in a national park in California, basically?
Dr. Waterman is a man of mystery. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of questions, Jordan, but yeah.
I didn't sleep well thinking about this after the movie, Anthony.
Add that to the pile of questions, because there are many more to come.
But yes, the creepy park ranger, already creepy from the beginning.
Creepy park ranger who is actually played by the film's director, Jack Woods.
Yeah, I noticed that after the movie, but yeah, fitting. No,
he plays a couple different parts in this movie because there's only 5 characters in this movie. So
yeah, but. And by the way, Anthony, we lost Jim and Vicky. I forgot to tell you. Did you notice that? Anyway,
where's everybody gets split up, they get back together. I'm pretty sure this takes place. This whole movie takes place in about 100 square feet.
This seems to be the dialogue constantly already, just from the get-go. Where's Jim? Where's Vicky? Where's Jim? Dave? Have you seen Jim? Vicky?
I mean, yeah. They were going on a picnic, and then all this stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
And so they get split up, and they make some bad decisions. Drink every time they make a bad decision.
But isn't it the movie starts basically they run toward a scary laugh in a nearby cave.
Hold on. First they see. Hold on. Let's back up. First they see a castle. They talk to a creepy park ranger.
A castle which looks oddly less scary than the abandoned house too. It looks cleaner and more well kept by comparison.
But Dave's like, I don't remember a castle around here. Yeah, I've been here before. Yeah. I don't remember a big ass castle. Huh.
Right.
Let's go investigate. All right. If you're keeping track, the cabin is destroyed. They've just met a creepy park ranger, and now they've seen a castle. And they should just really rethink what they're doing
Yeah.
and just go home and tell somebody. Anyway,
The
but they
castle
don't.
looks like it's probably way too high up to explore anyway. You probably want to, yeah, it looks neat. Let me take a photo and then let's just walk away.
Yeah. And then they go by the cave, Jordan, like you were saying. They go by the cave. And
yes, because of that.
they hear crazy psychotic laughter coming from this cave.
Yes.
And what do they do, Jordan? What do they decide to do?
They walk, they go, hey, what's that? Maybe we should investigate. And they start walking towards the crazy laugh into the cave. I can't even, if that were, what the heck, man? I would already be creeped out. We see videos where people do this thing called randonauting. These kids do randonauting. They have like a built-in randonautica. But they run toward the evil laugh and decide to go inside the cave.
But before they do that, like they don't have any flashlights, so they freaking make some torches.
They make torches. They had flashlights. It's just 1970. Geez. But no, they got to have torches. Maybe they wanted something. Maybe they wanted to look neat, like
This is like an episode of Survivor, man. They're drinking from streams. They're making torches. They later on make some other things. But okay, so they make torches, as you do. But before they go into the cave with the creepy laughter, they see some giant, scary footprints. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
Go home.
Yeah.
Go
already
home.
Already.
Tell somebody. Tell somebody.
You see randonauting videos on YouTube where they find shit like this and they're freaked out and run away. Usually, even I'm just saying.
Yeah, even folks kind of being risky would be like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
but no, they go into the
usually. Oh my God, I'm out of here. Bye. Okay.
It's probably nothing. It's probably somebody
cave,
playing a joke on us.
They're walking in the cave with these MacGyver made torches. Thanks to Jim once again, the Boy Scout and the whole thing, who also has a pocket knife. Luckily, the only one with a pocket knife amongst them. You would think the other guy would have a pocket knife too.
Yeah, he's a geology student. You would think he'd have something. But anyway,
they see a human skeleton in the cave, and they find this book. Am I skipping ahead?
Oh yeah. Well, Vicky sees a skeleton. At first, she's like, "Ooh," and then she's like, "Oh, where's Jim?" And she just
once again off. they're still once again
they're running around in the cave, screaming
in the cave. Even after the human skeleton, they're not persuaded away from this at all by even the skeleton.
Who do they meet in the cave, Jordan?
This creepy old looking dude. He looks like a homeless guy living there, basically.
he talks crazy and he's laughing like
he's the one who's, I guess, the laughter came from, is this guy, which already we would have known that was going to be there already. Obviously,
he's got a strong laugh.
I would have expected a vagrant with a wine bottle, probably smoking crack or something. That's what I would have expected already anyway. So
whatever the 60s version of crack was.
Whatever he might have been shooting up in the 60s, I guess. That might have been heroin back then, I guess.
You may not be wrong, George. I don't know. I don't know what this guy's doing in the cave. It doesn't occur to them to ask. He's just like, I have a book for you. Oh, you're here. Here's the book. Here. Oh, great. Take this book.
They hand Dave the book, or is it Dave, not Jim, the book?
I think they give it to, he's hiding the book under these rocks. And guys, none of this is explained. We're explaining it exactly as it happens. You have to you have to piece this movie together yourself. Right?
And by the way, kids, if a homeless guy tries to hand you a book in a cave of magic, don't take it. Come on. Be smart. Get out of there.
Do the right thing.
Tell an adult. Telling it. Go out.
Go to a safe place.
Even if you're 18, 19 years old and you went in there with your church group, you don't know any better. Yes, go find
Jordan,
a grown
if you're
up
35 years old and you go into a cave and there's a creepy old man, tell an
adult.
Go
find an authority. Yes, after you get out of there.
Find someone older than you and talk to them.
or
or
find
anyone.
somebody older than you, wiser than. So find somebody smarter than you. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
Because you are doing some stupid shit.
You're a
Okay, so
dumbass,
he hands
just
him
like these
this.
people in this movie. Anyway,
He hands
sorry.
him this book, and they're like, "Cool." And then they leave, and then Dave's like, "Sure, you don't want this back?" And the man's just hysterically laughing like a crazy person. Very, very badly
Take
dubbed.
it. Yeah, this is almost like this side of the creepy guy in Manos and Hands of Fate. Another movie this side of the chief. Just like
Oh,
anybody
great!
might have seen
Yeah,
Mystery Science Theater 3000. Yeah.
fun little double feature. This movie and Manos, but Manos
Yes.
just drags. This movie does
This
not
guy's,
drag.
but this guy must be a relative of Torgo. He must be a descendant somehow.
Oh boy, I'm gonna re-edit this movie. We're gonna have Julian, and we're gonna have Torgo in the cave. Here is the book, master.
I like it.
So they're like, this is cool. Let's look at this old book. And Jordan, I could be wrong, but is this Bronson Cave where they're filming this?
It looks like either Bronson Cave or it looks like they're around Malibu State Park where they shot Planet of the Apes, the original Planet of the Apes, maybe. The same area you saw in like MASH, the opening of the TV show MASH, or it looks like right around there, maybe. I could be wrong. Maybe, and yeah, maybe that is Bronson Caves at the same time as well. That might be.
Yeah, I think it is, or maybe not.
I might be off
it
with my
looks like
geography, but
it
yeah,
looks
they're
like
not that far from each other.
So, okay. So if you're keeping count, they get this book and then they're like, hey, let's open it. It's got a little clasp on it. Jim gets his knife and they're jimming it open. They open it. It smells like
Yes,
sulfur.
he has to use his pocket knife to open the book without cutting himself doing it somehow.
He's a pro. This is not
He's a pro.
This is not his first old ancient book.
Jim knows how to pick locks, though. You give Jim a paper clip, he knows what he's.
So, like I said, they make all the wrong choices. This is like a role-playing game or an old choose-your-own-adventure book. And
yes,
they're just like saying yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go into the creepy cave with the laughter? Yes. An old man gives you a book. Do you take it? Yes.
Yeah.
Do you try to open up this book? Yes. It smells like sulfur. Do you continue reading? Yes. I mean,
yeah, if there was a PSA commercial for just say no to supernatural curses, whatever, just say no to supernatural books given to you by homeless people in a cave, this would not be it. This movie would not be it. It would not be a good PSA campaign.
Jim and his friends thought taking a book from an old man in a cave would be a good idea. They should have gone home.
We could see I could see a training film on this. Yeah, already a classroom training film, ephemeral film, whatever they used to call it.
But the book is cool. It's probably
the book looks neat. Yeah, it looks right like it looks like a prop from the Scared to Death podcast that comes on YouTube.
It looks like a creepy ancient old book, and it's got really good drawings, and they did their research. It looks
effectively creepy. Yeah.
I mean, there's coffee
and
stains
also,
on it.
Should we bring this up? Should we bring up the elephant in the room? I'm sorry.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room later. Because there's other things, I think. Let's get through the movie and then talk about that elephant in the room.
All right.
Or I don't know. Do you want to talk about it now? What do you think?
Well, the book kind of brings it up.
All right. Let's talk about the book. Let's do it. We're jumping right in, Jordan. We're jumping right in. Hot takes.
We're jumping right in. Okay. The elephant in the room is that this movie has a few similarities with the movie from 1981, 82, Evil Dead, because Evil Dead also has a curse book that a bunch of teenagers find in a cabin, which is also sort of abandoned. I mean, it just, at least for starters, as for starters go on a movie, plot starters, the first 20 minutes go, it's a little bit like Evil Dead. What would later come out about a decade or so later, a decade and a year later, maybe or two.
It's a little on the nose, especially with some of the shots. I don't know if it's 100% if Sam Raimi watched this movie, and there's more that we get to later. You'll see similarities, but yeah,
you can't help but wonder if they were stumped for a MacGuffin. Maybe they just misremembered it in their mind. I mean, this movie was in the back of Famous Monsters in the little forms that they had back then. If you look at little old magazines from back then, from what I know.
Oh, Jordan, as an aside, do you know who the voice is on the tape recorder? It's Forrest Ackerman, Forey Ackerman.
Oh, from those old famous monsters that are
Yeah,
that our parents, grandparents read, whatever. But yeah,
who I
which was
mean,
the original before YouTube, but before the internet or anything like that. That was the hype on monster movies. There was that magazine back in the old days.
yeah.
That was where kids looked for monster hype, basically.
So I thought it was cool that they got him to work on this as well.
And
Right
Forey
down
Ackerman,
the street.
he was like a god. I mean, I think he was friends to all these effects guys. The effects
Yeah,
guys
yeah. They all hung out with him. Okay, so
they'd all go to his house and hang out. Yeah, just like
going back to Evil Dead, visually there are some things. It's more visually choices that are made, like the book spinning through the mist, people in
yes.
robes. It calls back to Army of Darkness. It's not just Evil Dead. It's like the whole Evil Dead series.
Oh, I
Of
didn't even think about
films.
that. Army of Darkness had that giant book that Ash has to deal with as well. That giant spell book that looks very similar. I didn't even think about that until now.
And there's
That's
scenes of
funny.
people in robes in this sort of netherworld, this red tinted world. There's just a lot of
Yeah.
visual similarities. Plus, there is a professor. There is a reel to reel tape recorder in Evil Dead. That's what spawns everything. In this movie, in this movie, it was, we find out later, Dr. Waterman, as they're looking through the book, Dr. Waterman gets this book. He's a geologist. I don't know why he's getting an ancient book. It's 1,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's a manual on demonology, and he starts to tinker in with some of these spells, and some stuff starts to happen. So like a little later they go into that, but that is a very direct parallel to Evil Dead, and almost, I wouldn't. It's possible that Sam Raimi didn't see Equinox. I know a lot of filmmakers in his era did, as a drive-in movie.
Yeah. I imagine this was a big drive-in movie back in its day, mostly. That's probably mostly where kids saw it, kids and families saw it, or kids and teenagers saw it.
Yeah, this is like your definition of a drive-in movie.
And drive-ins back in the old days, if you do the research and the history, it was basically second run. It was like where the movie went after it first got released, or it was where a movie just went directly. If it didn't make it mainstream in a movie palace, a regular movie palace theater, which would be in a downtown area or whatever, the main town area, whatever.
But according to Wikipedia, which never lies, this movie made $849,000 off of an $8,000 investment. So they must have run it multiple times across the country in different venues. I mean, I don't know how you're counting that without VHS. That's an insane number.
Unless if they just did unless they just did a roadshow print where they had to take the print from cinema to cinema, drive-in to drive-in, whatever. That could have been also. That was known to be done back then as well, from what I know.
Yeah. So anyway, they're reading this book, and he's reading Dr. Waterman's notes, and there's like 2 times I read the book. But anyway, it has the Lord's Prayer backward in it. Dr. Waterman calls it a veritable Bible of evil.
Yeah,
it's a book on demonology. And so Dr. Waterman,
that's some Kabbalah, some Kabbalah shit, almost
deep ass Kabbalah,
some Tetragrammaton stuff going on there.
So basically, talk about that a little bit. That's the Lord's Prayer backwards. Of course, Susan would know. She's a good Christian girl. And then they sit down for a picnic, I believe. And then they're kind of eating while they're looking through this book, probably getting chicken grease on the pages. Anyway.
Yes.
So Dr. Waterman shows up, grabs the book, and runs off. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I forgot about that.
The
Dr. Waterman, just out of nowhere. Yeah. We think it's Dr. Waterman. Yeah.
We think it's Dr. Waterman, grabs the book. They chase him down this stream. I think Dave just like pushes him over, and then he dies.
This is where the movie begins again. Are we even at the part where the park ranger starts to do something creepy?
No. That's in just a minute. Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
So
okay.
Dr. Waterman, park ranger shows up again in a minute. So the Dr. Waterman falls in the stream. They think he's dead. They drag his body onto shore.
Yes.
And then they walk away, and then Jim's like, yeah, let's tell somebody here. Finally, thank goodness somebody has some sense. But he's like,
Yeah.
let's go finish that picnic first and get the girls, and then let's go,
First, let's
whatever.
finish eating. Yeah.
And then well, then they go back, right? And Dave's really distraught that he killed his professor. It was all very weird. And you go back, and the body is
Yeah.
gone. The body
He
has
was running after
disappeared.
him. He fell in the creek. He hit his head. Bam. He was dead. Or so we thought.
And now the body's gone. The body has
Yes. Now the body
disappeared.
of the professor's just vanished. Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
So then they're sitting there and looking for the body, and who shows up but Jordan, our buddy, the park ranger, Asmodeus.
Yes. And
that is not a park ranger's name, everybody. I'm sorry.
And yes, he's also very pale looking, very, very gaunt looking all the time. Like he's got Halloween makeup on, basically.
He's super creepy too. What are you
guys
doing? He's super creepy.
What are you kids doing here? Yeah, he's the kind of guy that, like, you wouldn't want him to be your neighbor. He'd creep the fuck out of you if he was your neighbor, probably.
Yeah. And so Jim has no sense, and he's like, yeah, Dr. Waterman came and grabbed the book, and he's like, book? And he's like, oh no, he's like some strange character out of a book. Yeah. Anyway, and then so Dave has a little bit of common sense and realizes this park ranger, something's up with him. Let's not tell him about the book and all of this stuff. Okay.
Yes.
They're like, there's a crazy guy in a cave in a book. And I was like, yeah, a crazy guy, like something out of a book. And then so Dave covers there. The park ranger's like, you kids got to go, get out of here. There's bears, whatever. Park ranger excuse. Don't litter. So we have a good environmental message there.
Yeah. If you look really hard, you can see a Native American crying in the corner of this screen after they say that. Yes.
And so anyway, I just realized at this point that Vicky and Susan are wearing the same color shirt. And I don't know.
That's right.
Why that bothers me. It doesn't really. I just noticed like the same color. I don't normally notice costumes, but anyway.
One of them lives on the streets. That's what you didn't know.
Yeah. So then they all split up. I think Jim's going back to get the book or whatever. And then Susan is by herself somehow. I forgot.
Somehow. Yes.
Everyone splits up. And then the ranger puts on this creepy frog ring and attacks Susan.
Attacks her, assaults her almost.
Physically, sexually. He
starts to pull up her shirt, oddly. That's the odd part. And his hand actually goes right up her shirt on the side, which is like, even though you don't see anything, you're like, oh, yeah. Is this a scene out of Emmanuel?
Jack Woods got him got a little feel there, sadly.
Well, yeah. What was going on?
He got too into character. But anyway, he's drooling. It's really weird. Like they focus
Jack
on
Woods pulling a Michael Winner. Yes.
You see their mouths contorting. He just kind of kisses Susan in a sloppy way. It's really gross.
It's like, yes, sexual assault this side of, I don't know. I just, it's a creepy scene also, just for even being a PG movie or whatever rating. This movie feels like a G movie almost most of the time. That's the odd part. Until that. I almost think they put that in for exploitive reasons. I know that was demanded a lot back then. If you were releasing at drive-ins, you had to have some kind of promise of sex or nudity.
Yeah. There were no boobs in this. Jack Harris is like,
but yeah,
let's have a scene
especially
where,
Yeah. Especially for overseas, especially for Europe. If the movie's going to go to Europe, you wanted to have some kind of promise of sex or nudity at the same time back then. That was very risque for back then. That probably looked even more shocking back then, I imagine, though.
Well, it was kind of a weird, shocking scene. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. That's the weird part. And so the her cross falls out, and then he sees the cross and turns, like
like he's Renfield or a vampire. Yeah.
And so he goes, and then Susan's all like, oh, that was weird, barely kind of remembers it. And then so they find out that they go back to the book and they're looking at the book again, and the book is 1,000 years old. There's a lot of different conjurings and pictures in there. And then Dr. Waterman, they find more notes, and Dr. Waterman's like, yeah, so I tried some of these spells, as you do. Let me just,
No big deal. Yeah, spells every day. Yeah.
And how a geologist can read whatever this is, backward Latin or whatever it's written in. I don't know. I guess Latin, maybe.
Movie lad.
It's all about good versus evil. You know, and there's all these kids in robes, and there's a flashback. And by kids, I mean like teenagers with
Oh
sneakers
yes,
on and
there's these
robes
flashbacks with
jumping into this pit of hell.
it looks like a really fan film of King Kong, basically.
And that's another Army of Darkness kind of moment right there.
Yes, yes.
But it's all about this demonology, and basically Dr. Waterman starts with these spells, and he creates an instability between our world and hell, as we see later. One of the things he created was that giant octopus that destroyed the cabin. And then we find out some more of his creations later on. But this was just like fun and games for Dr. Waterman, right?
Right.
And so about the number 9th time when they should just go home, because all of this has happened, Dr. Waterman, the creepy man in the cave, the creepy ranger. Vicky's like, I saw that skeleton. Let's get out of here. Of course, they don't listen to Vicky. It's 1967, right? So Dave's like, well, let's go check out that castle real quick before we go. Come on. Like nothing phases these guys. Nothing phases them.
And I think, doesn't one of the females want to go, of course, the one that got attacked basically by the park? She's the one that's like, I'm over this. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, I think everyone's like, let's go.
They're still not even thinking about her. Like, these are the most insensitive friends ever, and girl and boyfriend, whatever, that this chick could ever have after being assaulted by this creepy park ranger.
Well, I think it's the girl who saw the girl, Vicky, who saw the skeletons, like, let's go. And like 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, by the way, I saw the skeleton. Let's go. And I think something's up with Susan. She's very confused, disoriented. Yeah. And so they're like, well, I tell you what, we'll go to the castle, but if something bad happens, let's look in this ancient book of spells and just use it has symbols that protect from evil. Let's just make us some of these symbols, like out of grass and twigs.
Yeah.
So that's their plan.
Yeah, exactly.
That is their plan for protecting them, because they clearly at this point know something's up. This is not a normal picnic. This is not a normal day in the woods. There's something going on here that's very bad, but gosh, we got to check out that castle. That castle.
I guess if you wrote this off, as this is maybe all Dave's bad dream, maybe Dave had a bad trip. Maybe he did maybe all these kids were on drugs that day. That would explain it better, though. It would explain everything a lot better. It would explain the logic of everything.
That's a solid fan theory right there. I'd have to think about that. It might make more sense if they were just drugged or doing drugs or something. They're way too chill about all this.
We also saw in the flashback, what was it, that the creature that messed up the house was a beast of 20,000 fathoms looking kind of creature. With just tentacles, basically, that were stop motion animated and all that.
Yeah, or it came from beneath the sea. These are all very Harryhausen
influence,
effects,
which look neat, I will say. Don't get me wrong.
They're jerky, but they're fine. And we're about to get into the effects here. So the ranger comes back. He puts on the frog ring.
Oh yes,
he turns into a monster.
Becomes the big force perspective monster.
Big force perspective simian looking. It's a really cool looking green monster that kind of reminds me of the Ymir, however you say that, from, I've got to get this right. 20 million miles to Earth. It looks kind of like that without a tail. But anyway, it looks like it's really Kong inspired, this monster. It just comes, the ranger turns into this thing and it comes after them to get the book. And so they run into a canyon, and then Jim and Dave run up to the top of this cliff, or they're already up there. And then they just start throwing rocks at it, unconcerned. No moment of shock, nothing like what the hell is that. It's just like, let's throw rocks at it. I mean,
he's like, Jim, go up there. And that's right. They make a spear very quickly out of a nearby weed.
Well, in a minute,
as well.
It's crazy. They chases them into this canyon, and they all go down into the canyon, and then Jim's just like, let me fashion a spear. He gets his knife, which comes in handy.
Yeah.
fashions a freaking spear. This giant monster is trying to get them. It's got this branch
out of a
it's trying to
Swiss
get
Army
them.
knife, I guess, which is something like that, basically.
Yeah.
What it looks like that he's got.
And so the creature, or no, first, no, it okay, before all this happens, it's chasing the old man. We jumped ahead. So the ranger puts on the ring, is chasing the old man. Literally, this monster grabs, it's kind of a cheesy effect, but grabs the old man and slams his damn body into the ground. Like just like a rag doll, slams it into the ground. And the girls, that's how this happens. The girls see that and say, oh crap. And then they run. Jim and Dave are up looking for the castle. It's not there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then, but he just straight up grabs this body and man, just like slams it with a thud into the ground a couple times. So they're a little concerned. And
I know it was at this point in the movie. It was at this point in the movie I realized that I wasn't stoned enough and that I need to be more stoned as
you need
well.
to be as stoned as these characters who are mildly concerned about a giant ape thing that just killed a guy brutally. So it's kind of like, meh.
Yeah. They're clearly doing drugs off camera, these kids. Clearly. We just don't see it on screen. But clearly they're either popping pills with their champagne off camera or they're, because their decision-making process is clearly influenced by something else.
They got some strong stuff. They got that. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows what's in the Colonel's secret recipe there? But
really, what was in that chicken?
So Jim makes a freaking spear, and then Dave is like, "No, go up there and throw some more rocks at it, distract it." So then Dave just runs out with the spear, stabs the damn monster, just runs up and throws him like 20 feet, and then the thing dies. And then they're like, again, time number 10 when they should have left. They're just like, let's go look at the body. Let's go make sure it's dead.
Yeah.
Like, come on. What is wrong?
And they're still holding the goddamn book at this time, the whole time. They're all about the goddamn keeping the damn book. I mean, I would have given up on the damn book at that point.
It's Dr. Waterman's book.
What is so special about Dr. Waterman?
We got to get Dr. Waterman to say, gee whiz, gang, we got to get Dr. Waterman his book back. I want to get an A this semester. Anyways, so then the freaking monster dies and it disappears later. So then Vicky's like, let's go. Dave is like, well, let's go get the book first. Let's get this book because the book was off in the cave or not the cave, in the canyon.
Yes.
And then Jim's like, let me go get my camera so I can take a picture of this thing, this monster, so that people would believe us. Otherwise, they're not going to believe us. How would you know? You haven't tried to tell anybody.
Yes, exactly. They haven't even called. We haven't. All we've seen is that park ranger. As far as authorities go, we've just seen the creepy park ranger. As far as I remember, yes.
But I mean, all of this has happened in the space of an hour, guys. This is like real time.
Yes.
I have not had months of my life this interesting. And so
in 1 hour, especially.
Exactly. So Jim goes to get his camera and he sees a beer can floating down the stream. It kind of seemed arty to me. They'd really dwelled on this whole idea of the beer cans. And then he goes to a camp, a little fire ring, and there's some beer cans there, and the ranger comes up to him.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hey, kid.
Yeah.
I give me that book. Finally, Jim realizes, the dumbass, that something's weird here. So he pulls out his talisman, and then the ranger's like,
yes,
oh, no. It's like, all right, well, you're pretty smart, kid. You're smarter than I thought you were. How about this? I'll give you anything you want in the world. Just get me that book.
Yeah, that's right. He gives Jim the Faustian bargain.
Yeah. And so whatever you want, money, girls, whatever. And then so Jim runs off and he says, all the money you'll ever want, kid. And this really weird way. And so around this time before,
how could you resist after that? Why would you run away after that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Creepy park ranger who was clearly affected by the symbol that you made, weaving twigs together. I mean, something's going on here. So Jim isn't the brightest bulb in the tree. He may be handy with a knife, but he's
like the MacGyver of this movie sometimes, but not when he needs to be, really.
And so meanwhile, Jim and Vicky and Susan are walking, and Susan drops her cross, right? It falls off of her because the chain was
Oh
broken.
yes,
And she
yes.
attacks Vicky, just like the park ranger attacked her, trying to kiss Vicky,
That's
which is a
right. She
little
gets all
risque, a little innuendo. But she tries to
yeah.
kiss
She
Vicky
also
and like
has the
attack
dark
her.
makeup as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the funny thing. Every time they turn into what is it? They're possessed by Modius. Is that what it is?
Asmodeus, or yeah.
They put dark makeup around their eyes, basically around their cheekbones, and that's pretty much it. That every time it's like,
And so, yeah, it's kind of like cheap under eye makeup. It's funny, but it's like, whoa. And so they pull Susan off, and then I think it's Vicky's. What is it? I think one of the symbols, one of the symbols gets her back to normal. Like Dave pulls his or something. And she's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. These thoughts in my head.
oh yeah, it's this weird looking dream catcher looking thing, or they've already shown us at some point in the movie all these symbols that'll work against the beast, which is actually more than one, surprisingly.
I
It's
mean,
basically every religious symbol
I will
rubs this
say
supernatural the wrong way.
this movie has a universe. That's one of the interesting things about it. A lot of thought went into this, intentional and probably unintentional things. Like there's a universe going on here. And one of
True.
the funniest,
Yeah, true.
strangest things about this is you have these stupid ass kids who don't know when to go home. And then you have the fucking forces of evil. Like you have a
Yeah.
portal to hell. And then you have all this shit and the devil himself.
Yeah.
And you got these stupid kids who just want to like fart around in the woods. It's funny, and they're also
We just
gee
want to
whiz
hang out
about
in the
everything.
woods.
Yeah. Let's go back and
Yeah.
finish that chicken. Like their priorities are not in line with where they should be.
Was that their beer can? I can't remember. The
No,
beer
they're
can
not
floating in
that
the room.
cool. They're not that
No,
cool. That
they're
was,
not. God, they're so square, man. That's what's annoying about them too. I'm sorry.
I mean, freaking Jim was probably going to go report somebody for littering or drinking alcohol in a state park. Who knows? These kids are
I
not
know
cool.
they're just such whitey white kids. That's what's annoying about them.
These are
Sorry to
not
be
these are not the
racist
cool
sounding.
kids hanging out behind the gym. These are not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dave is like, oh, Susan's been possessed. Well, let's get the book, and the book can help her out.
Yeah, the damn book again. They won't let the book go ever. I mean, geez, what? Anyway.
But okay, so Dr. Waterman created all these monsters and then opened up a portal to hell, and you are going to somehow use this book to fix Susan? I mean, all of this is delivered very nonchalantly, guys. We are far more passionate about the decision making going on here than they are. They're like, yeah, no problem. Let's just use this book of demonology to fix Susan. Ain't no thing.
They have a whole aw shucks approach to everything. The way they go about everything in this movie, including this part.
So Jim comes up and he says, oh yeah, this ranger came up. And then Dave's like, Asmodeus, duh, I just remembered that's another name for the devil. Why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah.
And then suddenly,
that would have cleared things up earlier. Oh my God.
As if that changes what they're going to do, Jordan. As if that changes anything. Knowing that the ranger is the devil, that has zero effect on anything. It's just funny.
It wasn't so much a revelation as oh yeah.
Fun
Modius. Oh yeah.
And so the ranger turns
into
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's just like that Jimmy Stewart kind of oh shucks, like whoa, you got the book, you can just reverse the spell, can't you? Yeah.
Oh, Asmodeus is another name for the devil.
Well, shucks, Modius is just another name for the devil. I forgot all about it. Whoa. Now I'm going into Barney Fife, but yeah, you get
same shit, man. I mean,
same shit, yeah.
And so, anyways, then the ranger turns into a giant green caveman with some really cool.
Oh yes.
This is not stop motion. This is a guy in painted green, but it's some really effective force perspective effects. Like these guys are they're using all the low budget visual effects tools and in
This
camera
is an old
stuff and
technique
everything.
they did bring back in the Lord of the Rings movies and a lot of parts in the original Lord of the Rings movies actually. And what it is, it's where a person is in the foreground of the camera, close to the camera. Somebody's in the background. You frame it up to make it look like one is more gigantic than the other, essentially, and that's how you have forced perspective. Very simple, very effective technique when done properly. But it takes some framing to do it, but it is done very well here most of the time throughout this sequence with this sort of a giant monster. Once again, kind of Ray Harryhausen inspired, and Darby O'Gill and the Little People inspired. Another movie, old movie by Disney. Anyway,
Yeah, a little trick, but it's used to good effect here. And so at some point, I
yeah,
can't remember, it was a little earlier, that Jim
for
and Dave
sure.
discover of an invisible barrier to was presumably hell. Like it's red, and you go in and the sky's red, and everything's like red tinted. And so they're like, "Oh, look at this! Let's throw a rock in here. Oh, wow, isn't that cool? Huh? We're gonna make a
Yeah,
lot of money off of this." And then they walk through the barrier and they see the castle, right? And so
yes,
they run through the bear. They run from the caveman into the barrier, and then the caveman grabs Jim, and you see Jim literally sideways, and then they're trying to pull him out of the barrier. It's kind of
mm-hmm.
like that. What was that Twilight Zone episode where they had the doorway? I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things, where somebody's being sucked into an invisible barrier, different
Yeah.
nether world.
Oh, that's right. It's an old split screen effect they're using on there, though. Yeah,
Oh, totally.
basically.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But it's really split screeny for sure.
Yeah.
Jim is pulled into the other side of the barrier, and then Dave goes in there to find him, and then he sees Jim, or is it Jim? It's like
Yes.
Jim is like laying there, and he's like, I need some help, and he's just like, you can see it's a very small touch, but he reaches up and he knows that the talisman that he has is under his shirt, and he breaks it. And Dave doesn't even notice that Jim does this. Jim in quotes, right?
Yeah.
And then Jim starts acting
Right.
really
Right.
weird here, you know? And then Dave's like, I forgot what he says, but he's just like, something about the book. Let's go get that book, And it's like, that's
And we're
funny.
back to the book again. Yep.
Back
Yep.
to the book. Jim's no dummy, or Dave's no dummy. So, and then he
Yeah.
realizes
So we get to is this where we get to the other big effect, basically?
yeah. And then, we're almost there. And then Dave figures out that this isn't Jim. This is Asmodeus.
Jim is possessed by Modius, damn it.
So, yeah, exactly. So then they run, and there's the very same barrier. And I realized at this point, the equinox is when the day and the night are of the same length twice a year, right? So here we are at when good and evil have an equal amount of power, and then this is the barrier between them, and it's very unstable, and all this happened because Dr. Waterman cast the spells. So basically he opened up a porthole into hell so these demons could come through, I guess, that he summoned with this evil freaking book. And he's a geologist.
Yes.
So then Asmodeus, or Jim and Dave, fight, and they're on top of a cliff. They're on top of the mountain. Remember
This is after Jim is possessed by Modius. Yes.
Yeah. Jim is possessed by Asmodeus, and he attacks him, and they're fighting, and then Jim turns into like this big winged devil. Asmodeus assumes his true form.
Which I loved this part. I thought it was kind of neat.
Jim turns into Asmodeus, or the park ranger, and the park ranger turns into the devil. So just so, and then this is a really good effect. I mean, it's kind of a weird looking model.
Yeah, it almost looks like that later Larry Cohen movie, Cue the Winged Serpent, kind of stop motion going on, demon stop motion flying around, I guess for them it was an inspiration of the harpies from the Ray Harryhausen movies.
Yeah,
Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts. What am I talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, funny you should mention it. I think it was Dave Allen who worked on Q. And it was very Harryhausen inspired. It looked kind of like,
it was.
I know 1 Million Years BC came out, I think, right before they started making this movie. So that may have been an influence.
Funny that the main characters are named Jim and Dave, and I didn't have that epiphany until now. Like that's just like the animators
Oh,
that worked on the movie.
duh!
You know,
I never realized that. Yeah, yeah. Mr. Harris and oh man, or Doctor
it's like they
Harris,
just
Jim and
used
Dave.
everybody use their own names and everything. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, I forgot who the script was attributed to, but so
I
anyway,
forgot to look as well.
the devil in this the stop motion animation devil, really pretty jerky, but really fun effect. It grabs Vicky, fucking kills Vicky.
Yeah, it just swoops down on her with its animated wings and just
Yeah.
does something we assume bad, basically.
And by the way, yeah, Jim's dead somewhere. So here's the body count begins. Finally, people begin to die. Jim died in the other world.
Yeah.
And then Vicky dies because the thing grabs her and just slams her down. And then
Yes.
Susan finds Dave unconscious, and then he grabs her cross, and then she runs. They both run into the cemetery because here we have a cabin.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We have a cabin, we have a park, a state park, and then we have a cemetery in the middle of this. And so they run into the cemetery. Kind of a cool looking scene, actually, or a cool
the cemetery. Set. It looks real.
Yeah. Oh no, they did not make a cemetery.
Yeah.
They hide behind this one sarcophagus or tombstone or whatever this is. That's a big cross. He flies into it and explodes.
Yeah.
And then.
Oh, that's right.
This is where the movie began. This is what, and I kind of like this about this film. Like it's like Memento or something. You're seeing things that you didn't. Now you see it. A lot of movies do this, but
everything finally comes together, and yeah, at least you have
together.
Sequences happening for once. And this, yeah, the movie actually has like a lot of. It's like it's finally you have action going on. There's a reason for it. All that finally, yeah. Yeah, I agree on that.
And the movie's credit, it does. It pays off. I mean, anyway, so the devil blows up. We go back to the beginning with a little more information here. Now we understand what the explosion was. Jim looks over, sees Susan is dead. I mean, he doesn't run over to help her. So he's, I don't know, whatever. The book is, who knows where the hell the book is. But then all of a sudden this giant apparition, a pretty cool effect, actually. Giant apparition, like the apparition of death. Black robes is like, you will die in a year and a day, puts this curse on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just leaves Susan, and that's when he runs up to the driverless car and it hits him.
And we're back to the beginning of the movie.
Back to the tape.
Yeah, back to the tape, exactly.
And then so after all of fucking this, and who knows what was in the actual tape,
we're back inside the padded room in the psychiatric clinic with the doctor.
So
and all
the doctor says to the reporter, anything out of that? He's like, nah, nothing usable for a newspaper story and any of that. Nah, boring.
I know. You're like, what? That's all you got? What? So I guess it was all in Dave's mind.
It's weird because what was on the record? That was Dave.
What was actually said? Yes, I guess that's what it.
That's just a cockamamie story told by some kids on drugs.
So then we had this.
Happens to be a year and a day from then, so it's like they say that 5 times.
So the trippy thing is, yes, in the ending we have the doctor.
They take Jim's cross away from him. He's like, my cross.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They put him in a straitjacket and drag him off. Like, God dang, dude, they just drag him off.
Oh, that's right. When they're forcing him in the straitjacket, it looks a little convincing as like he's in a hospital or crazy place.
Yeah, I don't remember what was in the original movie, if which of these scenes was added, if that was it. It looks like maybe this part was added.
God, it's been a while since I looked at that version on the Criterion, but because I've seen some of that version, the 67. I think the 67 version, though, just began right. There was no flashback.
There's no flashback. I think all this is added.
The 67 was trying to be just for an A to Z monster movie, literally from beginning to end. There was no flashback 2. It was the kids all died, I guess, at the end. That was it.
Yeah.
Or one survived, and that was it.
And so anyway, the reporter's like, nothing to see here. Guess I'll go. And then he walks out. Worst reporter ever, by the way. He walks out into the parking lot. And what does he see in the parking lot? Or what does he not see?
He does not see what's her face?
Susan.
I'm sorry. The blonde-haired woman walk right by him. And then but we saw her, the audience saw her clearly walk right by him and look at the camera, kind of give us a wink or so at the camera. And she looks like she's possessed by Asmodeus or whatever.
And then I want to say that I saw a Reagan bumper sticker in this scene. I never noticed before. So I guess he was running for governor of California at the time, or governor of
Oh, that would
California.
have been. I think, yeah. Oh, I think, yeah. He ran for that was yeah, because he ran for governor before he ran for president. If you look at the history
I
part
don't
on
know
it,
the dates, but I just saw a
yeah.
Reagan
So
bumper
that would have
sticker.
been yeah. He would have been governor running for governor. That's a trip. Yeah,
And
I forgot about
so
that.
then it says the in true Jack Harris style, the end question mark.
Yes,
He did the same thing in the Blob, right?
and audiences would see this later on that went to see Flash Gordon in 1980. Flash Gordon had a kind of similar ending title, was the end question mark, which is yeah, it's a classic kind of thing, obviously. But
Or
yeah,
is it?
I get. Did he do that in the Blob as well? I forgot
Yeah.
though. I didn't.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow,
there
that's
was a
funny.
sequel to the Blob. There were
Yeah.
yeah, there's a sequel to the Blob, a remake. Anyway, I think there's one direct sequel at least. But yeah, the end question mark. And I'll tell you why the question mark is there, Jordan, because I have a lot of questions. What the hell happened to the book?
Right.
Is Susan Asmodeus or is it Susan possessed? You know what I mean?
Is that what the demon?
Did David
the demon?
freaking Lynch direct this movie? Because I'm just like, what
Yeah.
the hell? Okay, is and how would there be a sequel if Dave's dead? Like,
Was that flying demon like a vampire to Susan? I guess. I mean, is that what happened? Yeah, I agree.
There's so many questions, but that's what I kind of love about it.
Yeah.
I really do like this movie. It
is an interesting movie, though. It's an interesting little sort of mess of a movie. It's an interesting early effort, though, by the guys behind it. Of course, at the same time, so we don't want to slam it too much. Of course, I'm sure these guys would even admit that this movie did not have a great script, obviously, and it was just an excuse to get from one effect to the other.
Yeah,
even though it was slow in between all that, in my opinion,
but the story is very interesting. It's and these guys had never made a film on this level before. So
I mean, Evil Dead is kind of a better made movie, I think, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a tighter effort. And Evil Dead knew its limits, at least mostly more so, I think, than this movie did. It understood its limits a little more. Maybe.
It was telling a different story. But I mean, you do have.
But it's a different movie either way. It is a different movie, though, Evil Dead.
You do have demons being summoned by a book, by a professor in a cabin. And then
that part's the same, but yeah, I feel like
that part's the same, but
Evil Dead's
an evil book. There's an ancient book of the dead. There are some similarities.
Well, okay, yeah. I forgot about Army of Darkness as well.
Yeah, and Army of Darkness too. I'm just saying suspect. And like
its TV show after. Yes, of course. Yeah.
I will tell
Ash
this
versus
story.
the Evil Dead. Yeah, okay. Tell the story.
I will tell the story. And so anyway, a buddy of mine and I were watching The Man with the Screaming Brain. Let's call my friend Raul. So
okay, Raul will be his alias to protect his anonymity.
And I were watching The Man with the Screaming Brain. We skipped out on it. It was a special screening, and so we left because the movie was not great. And actually, Bruce Campbell was there and was really cool, answering some questions before the movie. We went out to the bar, and then there's Bruce Campbell there. And so we're talking to him. He's really cool, cracking some jokes, all this. And then I look over at Raul, and he looks like a little puppy that just has to pee. Like he's all excited. And I'm like, don't do it. Raul, don't do it. I could just see what I could just see what he wants.
And what does Raul do?
Raul says, did Sam Raimi base Evil Dead on Equinox? And then Bruce Campbell's like, he just changes night and day. He's like, what? Like literally like he was possessed by a demon. What? Do you think that Sam Raimi to watch some movie and blah, 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 blah? It was over at that point. And Bruce Campbell was not our buddy after that. And he's probably sick of hearing that question. He's probably gotten it 50,000 times over the past however many years. But there are similarities, right? There are some curious similarities.
There are similarities, though. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know. But they're more visual,
especially in the beginning of the movie. But yeah.
But it's like the setup is similar. The idea is similar. Where they go with it is different. You know what I mean? So how many movies begin the same and then go in just a wholly different direction? And that's what Evil Dead is, a smaller story in a cabin, similar setup, Equinox is a bigger story. And that's one of the things I like about it. It's this weird universe of there's a bigger story to tell here.
Yeah.
And because we're looking at this through the lens of Scooby and the gang, we don't see what the bigger fucking story is. This
Right.
is like evil, pure fucking evil is possibly going to take over the world. Presumably, Asmodeus got the book. I don't know. There's so
But
many
it's summoned by a
questions.
bunch of aw shucks white kids, basically.
Yeah, in like khaki pants and stuff. It's
In
anyway.
khaki high water pants, yes.
High water pants. This is I will say this is the worst picnic of all time. It's the worst
Yeah.
picnic. It is also the worst first date ever because
I feel like this movie and Deathbed are like in the same universe. Deathbed is on the other side of the canyon. There's another picnic on the other side of the canyon. That's where the deathbed
that's where
is.
Deathbed is.
Deathbed from 1976, folks. Yes, the one that Patton Oswalt has a big long joke about. We'll have to talk about that one at some point.
Yeah, Deathbed's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Yeah. And we need to talk about that sometime. But okay, so worst first date ever because Dave and Susan are on a date. So
Good God, if this was a blind date episode, that'd be another story.
That would be. So what happened? Well, he took me to this like state park, and
with
then
his friend, it was a
him and
double
his
date.
friend found a devil's book, and then we saw some demons, and then
the park ranger tried to assault me. By the way, which I've already made a police report. Finally.
I would love to see that, dude. I would just love to see Susan filing a police report after all this. That's awesome. Okay. But I've seen this movie a ton of times, and there was a point in my life where this movie really fascinated me, and I made everyone in my circle sit down and watch multiple versions of this movie because there's also the version in the 80s, The Beast. I think it's the same as the 1970 version, but I feel like there were some different scenes, like they cut it differently.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong, but it's fun. It's a weird movie. It's got the gee whiz stupidness with the really
is fun. I will give
crazy implications of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's got good effects. They're amateurish effects, but they're really good. It's amateurish effects by people who would go on to be experts.
Oh yeah,
and stop
a lot
motion
of power
for
there.
Years later. It's filmed in supernatural color, as the trailer tells us, so that's good. It's also, I don't know, it comes from a good place. Like, when a movie has kind of heart to it, I don't know. It's a little movie that could, and it made a ton of money apparently. And it went on to influence a lot of different people, including possibly Sam Raimi. It's just an interesting movie if you're into this sort of thing. I can't think of anything else quite like it. It's very unique, and I think that's why I like it. Yeah, there are movies about kids in the woods and supernatural stuff, but this is just so whitewashed and innocent. It's just a bizarre juxtaposition. So, okay, Jordan, any other thoughts on Equinox?
I give it I would give this movie, what would I give it as far as ratings go?
What rating do you want to give the Equinox?
I would give it three spell books and one flying winged demon. No. I don't know if that's
You're adding up reviews here.
I'm adding on to it, yes. I give it the flying winged demon for, I don't know. Well, I just think it's an interesting, you can kind of hear me throughout this review kind of making jokes about this movie and all that. Yeah, taking stabs at it. But at the same time, I will commend this movie for being an early effort. These big guns behind the scenes that they had, big Oscar winners. So I give it 3 because it's an interesting mess of a movie.
Would you recommend that anyone watch this?
I would recommend, it's a time and place kind of thing. I think it's something you would watch by yourself on a Saturday night with a beer and a bowl of weed or a joint. Sure, absolutely. You might watch it on a date night as something, or with your friend as something to watch and laugh at on a Saturday night as well, for drinks or something like that. For sure, I'd recommend it in those terms. But as watching it as a serious movie, of course not.
No, it's campy as hell. That's
it's
part
cheesy,
of the fun.
Yeah,
it's campy.
It's an acquired
cheesy.
taste at this point.
It's not a scary movie, but it is It kind of pulls off a creepiness because it's just so weird. Anyway, I like it.
What would you give it? You, Anthony, more importantly, what would you give this?
I think I'll do mine out of 10.
Final thoughts. Yes.
I give it, personally, I'd give it a solid 9. But real world, I'll give it a 6 or a 7. Creepy dubbed laughter, men in caves. I think if you're into this kind of movie and you haven't seen this already, it's interesting. It's not slow. I mean, it moves at a clip. It's 100 an hour and 22 minutes or whatever it is. It does not
it's
waste
only like
time.
it's really only it's around 90 minutes. Even the 1970 version, from what I know, it's really in like 90 minutes, close to under it at least.
I mean, it made a lot of money. It must have been somewhat popular, but I think if you're looking for a goofy movie from this era that's short and just bizarre, then this is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
If you like old effects and you like stop motion, this is definitely a movie you need to see. So
stop motion seems to be something that's like an acquired taste nowadays as well. I think a classic, unless there are those people who like Nightmare Before Christmas, which is stop motion as well. But
yeah,
it seems to be something like that.
Nor is the dialogue, nor is anything else. I mean, it's a fun movie. I think it's interesting. It's certainly in many ways a classic. This is a classic film that's well regarded, more for what it produced and who it influenced, and a true cult movie if there ever was one.
Yes. So if anything, it did produce the power of Equinox, the supernatural power, did produce in real life the power of these effects wizards that came out of the movie. To put it very, very eloquently.
Yeah. Oscar
mildly
winners.
Eloquently.
I don't think any of the actors, except for Frank Bonner, who did WKRP, went on to do anything else. I could be wrong, but
yeah.
But anyways,
same here.
All right, and that was the 1970 film Equinox. Go watch it if you dare. Jordan, it's been great.
Follow the creepy laughter. Yeah.
And
great talking to you about this movie, Anthony, as always.
And for everyone, if you're ever walking by a cave and there's some creepy laughter in there, just make a torch. Create some talismans out of sticks and grass and twigs, and just go check it out.
If you're walking by a cave, or even if it's one of those storm drains that's very large that you can walk right into, you can fit your whole body into, and you hear laughter from that too, creepy laughter, do not follow it.
I mean, it's not going to be an old man with a book or Pennywise. Just check it out.
Yeah, you just don't know how these things are going to turn out, kids. It's not a good. You don't want to know.
Do it. Just do it. Say yes to everything. All right, Jordan. Yes. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it, Jordan. It's been great as always. And next time we'll be talking about some other movie, hopefully without an ancient Book of the Dead. And some
we'll have to change things up from there. Yes, we'll have to visit other worlds, other time periods. Yes, and this has been the Robots Took My Podcast, man.
All the money you ever want, kid.
By the way, where's Jim? Where's Vicky?
Where's Jim? Where's Vicky? Let's get the book, Jordan. Let's go back and get that book. But first...
Yeah, let's get the book first, definitely.
First, let's check out the castle. All right, talk to you later, Jordan. Bye.
Okay, talk to you.
And now a message from our state parks. Hi, I'm Asmodeus. I'm a park ranger, and don't you believe any different? I'm here to tell you that people camp and picnic around here, and sometimes they leave an awful mess. So pick up after yourselves. And be sure to put out those fires, too. And that friend of yours you're looking for, well, he's probably back in town, so just finish up your picnic and go home. Oh, and if you find an old book, well, if you knew what was in that book, you'd turn to jelly. It's not made for worms like you, so don't sell it to a museum and don't take it to the park's office. Bring it to me. I'm usually around somewhere on a horse. Oh, and there aren't any monsters around here either. But there are a few brown bears, so be careful. This public service announcement was brought to you by our state parks. All trailers, clips, music, or any other copyrighted material are used sparingly, edited from their original forms, and used for the purposes of criticism, discussion, commentary, and education about these fine films.